Welcome to the Divine Paradigm Symposium, revealing universal pathways to joyful living. Thank you for joining us. I'm Gail Hoag.
And I'm Gregory Hoag.
And together, we have been researching and developing sacred geometry technologies for over 36 years to support the evolving consciousness of humanity and all life on the planet. We felt the inner call to bring together a collaboration of poignant dialogues with other visionary leaders whose work we love and have followed for many years. We will explore their insights and knowledge in these conversations to bring inspiration and clarity for navigating this amazing time. As we emerge from the pattern interrupt of COVID and challenges of the past year, deep-seated inner knowing will bring us forward into something new and perhaps unpredictable. Our intent is to support you on your path forward into a life of fulfillment. We have some very penetrating interviews with this series. Each one will offer you something of extraordinary value. So stay tuned each day for the next 3 weeks to absorb all you can from each of these amazing people. Every program will be available for 48 hours, and you can watch all the replays on Sunday. So let's get started.
Hi, thank you for joining us. I'm Gail Hoag.
And I'm Gregory Hoag.
And we are here to continue our interviews with the Divine Paradigm Symposium. And today we have a very special friend. We're really thrilled to talk with Dr. Fred Grover, MD, and he is a board-certified family physician in Denver, Colorado. His private practice of 28 years is focused on integrative and functional medicine with additional expertise in anti-aging medicine and mind-body medicine. He's an assistant clinical professor at University of Colorado, and he's the author of Spiritual Genomic and Awakening Gaia. And he does amazing and wonderful things all over the planet. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about that. And welcome, Fred.
Thank you. So great to be here with you, Gail and Greg, and appreciate the nice intro. And hope everything went well over Thanksgiving. You're looking forward to the holidays here.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's been a long time that we've been friends, Fred, because you're quite an extraordinary MD. I mean, some of the things that you've been exploring and researching all over the world for decades has really, I think, been one of the exciting things that's brought us together. Some of the things that you've worked with sacred geometry and depositing forms and crystals. Can you share a little bit about that so people get to see that side of you too?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's been an amazing friendship with you guys. Thank you for sharing that. God, it's been at least 10 years or longer, I would assume. Time flies. I'm kind of in that space-time continuum like you are. What is time? Yeah, so I would say I'm one of these docs that tries to find the intersection between science and spirituality. And I find that sacred geometry is one of those realms that definitely intersects with science and spirituality. Obviously, in terms of looking at nature and the geometry we see in the Fibonacci spirals, looking at the matrix and the universe, et cetera, is all interconnected. And the other beautiful thing is even within our bodies, the double helix of our DNA has that Fibonacci sequence. So keeping that in mind, as above, as below, we can connect to that sacred geometry and find ways to help enhance our healing, to help enhance our connection to the divine matrix and to spiritually evolve in a more deeper way. I more intuitively and meditatively just flowed into this space of connecting with sacred geometry and also resonating with doing ley line work, energy grid work on the planet. And by working with many of the forms that were designed by Metaforms, particularly the Unity Grid, I was able to accelerate my spiritual growth and then find ways to utilize these forms to do deeper and more powerful activations on Mother Gaia. And I think in the meditative state of holding some of these forms and wearing some of these forms, I got downloads or insights in terms of where I needed to do some work to help heal the planet. So, for example, in my book, Awakening Gaia, I talk about the placement of the Unity Grid in Lake Titicaca several years ago to help awaken the divine feminine energy of planet Earth, and all these magical things that occurred, the synchronicities that occurred during that placement, and then with the placement of other forms around the world. And it's just been an amazing journey of enlightenment and, ongoing observations of what's happening on the planet. And I think a lot of what we're seeing in terms of the polarization is somewhat related to spiritual activations, the rise of divine feminine energy, and the backlash of kind of this toxic masculine energy that is fighting some of those activations that are occurring for, better or for worse. I think eventually it's going to be for better, but for right now, we're kind of in the washing machine cycle of it. But yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell in terms of sacred geometry. Taking it down to a smaller scale, I work with it a lot here in the practice, and I'll use forms with my patients while they're doing meditation therapies. I actually do ketamine therapy to help people with depression and anxiety, and even somewhat for PTSD. And I found that having the patients hold a form while they're in this deep, somewhat psychedelic state, traveling to the other realms, combined with sound therapy, combined with some Reiki-like energy work, that we can do just amazing transformative shifts in people to help them heal on a deeper level.
Ooh,
Wow.
I want to hear more about that, Fred.
It's so interesting that when we, and at large, think about health, that we often define it actually often in terms of sickness. You're healthy if you're not sick. But what drives us into that sickness sometimes is a lot more than just a bad virus or a bad germ, but it's the state of the body itself. And in your book, which, why don't, we'll put up some pictures on this book. It's a wonderful book that you've written, and we spent a lot of time together on one of the chapters on sacred geometry. And so I want to ask you several things, but right now, in terms of sacred geometry, it's like, I think one of the ways that we worked with it and defined it in the book, and I have more recently, is how the universe is created around particular patterns that are really found to be archetypes. That is very, very basic geometries that are found throughout the universe, throughout the human body, throughout nature. And when we bring those geometries into reality, into our life, like you said, you had people holding them, it's like they're an antenna system for this archetype that allows the body to start resonating, vibrating with something that is true, something that is at the basis of normality, at the basis of who we are. And so that has an effect on our health and well-being. And I'd like you to speak from your experience a little more to that concept, that aspect.
Yeah, that's a great point, Greg. And I think what you're referring to is the nature of entrainment. So when we look at a form, take, for example, your Unity grid, which I love so much, and you're meditating, looking at it in front of your eyes, for example, your visual cortex is being entrained to a geometric configuration, which is known kind of instinctively, I think for millions of years, that we have pattern recognition. And when we have that pattern recognition, it triggers a cascade of events that can be healing or enlightening in a way. When I've done really deep meditations, and I'll divulge that I have worked with plant medicines, I've found that when I work with these forms, it will open up almost a portal into a state of consciousness that I couldn't readily achieve without the utilization of sacred geometry, because it is kind of the lock and key element to helping me flow into, say, the sacred geometry of the universe, the grid above, or connecting to the sacred geometry of the spiral nature of a tree that I'm looking at next to me. So it's a tool which helps, again, activate, open that door to a recognition of patterns in nature, patterns in the universe. Very
And you
powerful
don't,
stuff, man.
yeah, you don't even have to see it or be aware of it to have that happen in your body physiologically.
Exactly. It
I'm
happens
hoping to-
automatically. And I think if you try to get too mental about it in terms of, oh, this tetrahedral angle, whatever, from a geometric perspective, it can take your brain offline and into a realm that you don't want to go. So you just flow with the form and be one with it, right? And you'll naturally go there. And I use photic entrainment, which is a flashing kind of strobe device in our meditation room that has a pattern. It's called the Pandora star, and that light entrainment can take people to brainwave states, so gamma or theta, for example. And I think that there's a similar kind of entrainment that occurs, but a different activation when you're just looking at a geometric form.
You know, I've always found it interesting that when people will come and say, "Oh my gosh, I saw that form in a dream," or they saw it in some elevated state, a meditative state, or a state of when they were doing some work with plant medicines, that they go into a place of geometrics that start to become present in their awareness. How do you explain that from your experience and also from your medical scientific experience?
I think what happens is when we go into a deep meditative state, our pineal gland or third eye is coming online. Through that activation of our third eye, we're able to see the higher complexity forms that may just appear deep in meditation. And then if we're meditating, we've got that form, it can kind of remind us and allow us to activate that pattern recognition and then activate, a deeper state of meditation. But I think what's happened in our world is, here I am in my office with my fluorescent lights and, in a box. Granted, I've got a beautiful view of the mountains, but I'm not out in the mountains hiking, connecting to nature and the geometry of nature. So that part of my brain is turned off in modern life. And how do we reconnect that part of our humanness, within this modern world? And I think these forms can help a lot. And I think being in nature can be a lot, very helpful. And some of the primal things, such as being around a fire, drumming and dancing, kind of these, Native American elements that really help connect us more deeply to Gaia that have been forgotten. And I think, sure, if we could have more drumming circles together and have these forms and experiences, we'd be a much healthier population with much less mental health issues, in my opinion.
For sure.
It really begs the question, what is health and what is the deterioration of health all about? I mean, obviously, what we're going through today with our technology, I mean, you mentioned the lights, the room, all the wiring in the walls, all the toxins in the environment that have been added in the last couple hundred years since the Industrial Revolution. That has an effect on our body negatively. And yet, some of the ways of overcoming that is what you talk about in your book, some of the other aspects of working with sound, working with dance, working with ultimately, that joy for life that can make such a difference in the health of the body compared to just finding another drug to counter the drug that you took for the problem that we created.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, the book is more or less just a toolkit on how to reconnect yourself to sacred geometry, to sound, to nature, to water, to dance, to even considering plant medicine. I even talk a little bit about sacred sexuality and how that can be very helpful in terms of connecting us more to oneness and to our deeper physical, spiritual beings. So my goal and your goal is, hey, folks, we've got these tools, we've got these opportunities that are surrounding us. Let's get out of our boxes that we're in and explore and awaken ourselves, reconnect ourselves. I think we've become so disconnected because of technology, more or less, enslaving us in terms of people have to check their cell phone every minute to see if they've gotten a message, to feel like they've got to look at their social media likes or whatever. And that has taken our brain offline from enjoying ourselves and doing the other things that we're referring to. I mean, there's so much more to life than looking at our cell phones. Let's get back to the joy and the passions of being in nature and feeling the sacred geometry around us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to explore more along that line with you, Fred, because I think that that's so important. The disconnections that we've been experiencing really since our birth, and it's escalated. It certainly has escalated, and all of the tools that we have been creating over the last 36 years are really about reestablishing the divine connections. And so here we are at this time of life on our planet in 2021. We've gone through this, well, we're still going through this pandemic, which has separated people more and more, and also created some extraordinary division. Or maybe the divisions were already there, but what's happened is that these situations have exacerbated what we are seeing, and we are more aware of the schisms that are there. And we're more aware of, like you were saying earlier on, this shift to embrace the feminine, to, it's very important that the masculine energy, that power over model is able to find its place of balance, because it's totally out of balance at this time. And so with what we're talking about with sacred geometry and connection and the work that you're doing, let's talk about people that are listening. How can we be supportive to them? How can they navigate this time of tremendous division and unknowing, not knowing what variant is going to keep people from getting back to their lives or whatever, and the stress that causes. And of course, when that causes stress, then there's also causations for, for health. So how can people navigate this time in a more positive way from your perspective, Fred?
A great question. I found it's been a really difficult time for me. I'm just feeling the stress of my patients come in every day, complaining about the restraints on their lives, the fear of getting COVID, the witnessing of suffering from loved ones that have had COVID, some that have died. I have some patients that have come in and got COVID before vaccinations were available and have long COVID syndrome and are struggling. I think this is a point where spiritually we really need to connect with oneness. And in that space of oneness, I found a lot of healing for myself in terms of wrapping my arms around people that are creating this sphere, that are divided and angry and sending all this toxic energy. And when I'm in that beautiful space, I say, I'm sorry you feel this way, or that you have this polarized view and that you want to attack me or attack somebody else. But I send you love, and I send you the light of awakening and the light of, we are one tribe. We have to get through this together, rather than this whole divided nature of I'm right, you're wrong. It's more of, let's have respect for each other. Let's have a deep conversation, not a superficial, opinionated conversation that has been fed to you or someone else that hasn't been, researched or vetted. So I think, we all need to step back, take a deep breath, realize that we're in this together, and for us to survive as a human species, for our planet to survive, for God's sake, we've got to get our act together. And to do it successfully is going to require a coordinated state of compassion, love, altruism, connectedness, connecting to that deeper, higher dimensional field above the fifth dimension to get there. And this reptilian level of energy that is just about fighting each other is going to take us down. And I think you guys, myself, and other people that are doing this deep work are doing our best to spread the light and to hopefully resonate it around the planet. But we need more people in our peaceful, light-bearing, mode of sharing that light to create a true tipping point into a state of healing for the planet and the people. And right now we're deep at war with each other, and I'm concerned. So I definitely encourage everybody watching this to go to that place of love, right? As Ram Dass says, be love, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
What you were talking about, it does come down to just two simple understandings to be applied to everything we're interacting with. And that is it promoting synergy? Is it promoting unity? Is it promoting that oneness that we feel that we're all moving toward and that's with diversity. It's not like people get afraid of that view of oneness. It seems like it takes away their choices and options, but it really offers them more in the way we celebrate diversity. But it's diversity, as you said, like with respect and with love and with drawing upon each other's uniqueness. So it's all about connection, not separation. And if something is speaking to separation, maybe it's time to step back and question whether that's a valuable perspective. And the other one, of course, is love versus fear. And so many of the things that are going on today with the whole breakdown is people letting their fear come to the forefront, and their fear of what's going on with the vaccines, what's going on with COVID, what's going on with politics. And you as a doctor really see the importance of abating fear in order to allow the body to be healthy.
Exactly. And I think the challenge is when we go into that state of fear, we raise our cortisol levels. When we raise our cortisol levels, which is produced by the adrenal glands, it actually creates an immune suppressive effect. with that immune suppression, we're more vulnerable to picking up COVID or picking up any kind of virus. Not only that, we're going to be more prone to developing diabetes, hypertension, depression, anxiety. The list goes on and on. So, as an anti-aging doc, that's one of the big things I look at is how to lower and keep cortisol levels normal, how to reduce inflammation. And so much of that is that mind-body connection and being a loving being, not being one that's divided and into a state of hatred and looking at things in a black and white way. We really have to find that appreciation on both sides and come together and love one another for our perspectives. And if we disagree, we agree to disagree. We find that middle point and say, hey, Dave, I hear what you're saying, but this is what I feel. And, let's come somewhere in the middle there and not, feel negative about each other towards it. And I think, I've seen people, unfriend me, this going back to this darn social media thing because I make some comment, or they'll fire off some really mean comment towards me instead of, being respectful and trying to understand perspectives. And it's just a sad reality that we've entered into. And I really want to see us come back to some level of normalcy. Right now, we're in a totally schizophrenic, fear-based, conspiracy-based, whacked out state of consciousness. And we have to get ourselves grounded. And we have to connect to our deeper, higher dimensional selves and let go of this lower dimensional, low energy state. So I think what you guys are doing is really going to help so many people connect and balance themselves. And, if us as a tribal community can do everything else to, share that energy on multiple levels, we'll hopefully start to get there soon.
Something that I was thinking about as you were just talking about this in the tribal communities. I've read that there are certain tribes that when a member of the tribe was really going off, maybe it was, an deep emotional disturbance or whatever, that the whole tribe would gather around that person and they would chant to them. They would chant the song that had been created when they were first born. They would chant their name back to them. Like there's something about needing to be recognized for who we are as that soul, that being, and that individual that is there now, and wanting to be grounded again, wanting to be accepted and appreciated and loved. And I think in some strange ways, when we were looking at how we were going to move into a time of higher consciousness and greater awakening and all of those wonderful necessary things, what we didn't see was we were very fractured. And it's not about coming back into some kind of mush, but a oneness that is a dynamic coming together of individuals, of sparks of light, of all, not the same spark of life, not the same, mode of being and thinking and creating, but these amazing sparks, just like every snowflake is always different. Everything is different. And the more that we can come back into that deep appreciation and acceptance and compassion for all of these different qualities, as we're in this very difficult time of awakening, I really feel like all the ways that we can pull together are so critical right now.
Yeah. And I love that story of helping to heal somebody in the tribe. And I think it's like a primal tribal love, right? That they're all heart connected to that individual that's struggling and holding a space that's helping to ground them, to help them open their heart chakra that is probably clothes to help them, balance their whole energy body in a state that is resonant and, connected to the field of energy within that tribe. That's what we need to do as a, local community and a global community to heal ourselves. And there's a great book if people are like, oh, Fred's full of BS talking about this and that. Read the book called Blue Zones, and it will show you how the communities that are living the longest are, like the Italian communities, some of these Polynesian communities where the family units are all together living in, one dwelling. They all love each other. The tribe's not judgmental. They're extremely supportive. How has that contributed to their longevity? It's lowered their cortisol levels, their sense of connection to one another, their sense of love to each other. So truly the element of, tribal or family love promotes longevity. It's not just what you eat. It's absolutely a mind-body sense of connectedness to others and that field of compassion and care. And in this technology world, it's so easy to be dark and disrespectful because you're not talking to somebody face to face, and they may not know me face to face, and they can just shout out some, profiled kind of element of, oh, Fred's a white doctor, he must be, paid off by big pharma, or he's part of this greater new order conspiracy. Completely wackadoodle thoughts that come into people's mind, instead of saying, oh, I want to meet Fred and understand his perspective and feel into, his intellectual deep dive, a spiritual deep dive on all these subjects, rather than just spouting off some kind of nonsense. So again, all I want is love and respect and connection amongst humans so that we can survive, thrive, and be happy and healthy.
Everyone really does want to, I think, survive and thrive at their heart level. And yet when you talk about some of these people that shout out to you, think of how long they went in their heads with that. I mean, you got one little bit of it, but I think what we need to understand, and especially with the social media stuff, is that the people that are doing the shouting out, they're going through hell in their heads. They're going through hell in their bodies. They're experiencing this pain, this anger over and over and over and over, and then they'll lash out. But they're the ones that are suffering. And if each of us could understand that this play, it's not about trying to get the other side or whatever we think we're separate around to get together, but it's working just on ourselves, and then things will be drawn to where they're to be drawn to. You know what I mean? In the sense of, it's all about being in your heart space and finding people that you resonate with, and this becomes your tribe. It's a time of discernment. All this stuff being thrown up in the air, it's our opportunity to say, where do I want to fall? Do I want to come down with these people? Is this what I'm drawn to? And when we're strong in that sense of connection, then it works with whoever we're meeting around all the edges. They feel the connection, they feel the resonance, because we don't have any animosity toward them, because we're in our center of our being us.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think they're projecting on us, projecting their fears or their opinions based upon something they've read or heard. I want to listen to them. I want to hear what they're saying. And my response will be in a respectful, heartfelt way. And, I may throw in, I hear what you're saying, but I'd like for you to open your mind to other perspectives and to feel what you're saying in a more heart-centered way. and how that may feel to other individuals that you're sharing that with, whether it's
Hmm.
something, kind of sharp and mean to them, or loving. And how does that feel to you sharing it that way? I want them to be more visceral in the way that they're commenting, whether it's virtually online or sharing with me, so that they're in that more humane state and they're not disconnecting their emotional, spiritual, energetic body from what's coming out of um, their words that are coming out. So yeah, I think wake people up to that deeper level of what they're saying is what it amounts to.
I really feel for the young people. We have our two daughters who are 21 and 23, and you have children that are, they're all going through so much right now, and they don't have like the broader perspective that we have of being older and having gone through a lot of different things. And I really feel for them. And I wish there was some good, some really good guidance. Sometimes with our daughters, I see them struggling, and part of it is trying to find their place, and it's such a moving target right now. And there's so many things that are emotionally so disturbing. So many people and young people are going through so many emotional crises right now with all of this, and on top of that, with climate change and all of the things that we see astrologically that are just really in our face, to be able to embrace something different, to look at ourselves. But for these young people, how do you work with them? I know that you work with people who are really struggling emotionally. Depression is a big thing right now. What can we do for these young people?
Great question. I think there really needs to be, mindful-based curricula that's started in elementary school and ramped up in middle school and high school, and continued throughout our education. I mean, there's physicians I've known. I have a good physician friend who jumped off a parking garage and took his life. I mean, just horrific stuff. There's a huge issue with physician suicides right now because of the pandemic. And I keep thinking to myself, what could I have done to have helped save his life in terms of introducing him to breath work or meditation or working with sacred geometry, and I always kick myself, saying, what could I do for the greater community in terms of helping them find ways to relax and be more heart-centered and more grounded. And I think so much of it is, really encouraging mindful-based activities. And even our, yoga studios are all closed up for the most part now. So, can we do yoga on Zoom? I guess so, but it's not going to have that same feel energetically as being there with a group of people. But I think our younger, community, the more we can, as parents, as teachers, etc., really emphasize the importance of doing meditation daily, or at least a few times a week, connecting with nature, introducing them to sacred geometry, the healthier they'll be. I think there's another big component of, maybe encourage them to read books like The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle on letting go of the ego. The New Earth, I love his philosophical, spiritual takes on the insanity of our planet and the people, and how we can clear ourselves of that by letting go of the ego the best that we can. And I think there's so much of an emphasis on, what you've accomplished and how much money you've made. We need to let go of that shit and just focus on being loving individuals and being passionate about the work we do. And, we should be able to live a comfortable living if we're doing what we are passionate about. So combination of letting go of ego, more mindfulness, and then supporting these young people the best that we can in terms of what can we do to address climate change? What can we do to address the misinformation and the anger that continues to erode away at our community? Guns. Oh my God! I mean, just yesterday and pretty much every day there's a mass shooting. What are we doing about that? Nothing. And we need to wake up and change things rapidly.
Yeah, that really is the issue, waking up.
And, like you said, the gun issue is a financial issue. It comes down to people choosing finances and, as you said, power or fame or just stuff over what is it to be a human being? What is our opportunity now that we're in a human body? And that's really what your book explores, what we're exploring with these different avenues, you working with medicine and the whole periphery around it, of what feeds into it. And I love that. So let's talk a little bit more about, there's so much to talk about. I don't know, I'm thinking with your book on spiritual genomics, we'll put a link at the wherever this is posted, we'll have links so people can buy your book, because it's a worthwhile book to purchase. And so we'll be selling it to people watching this. But Spiritual Genomics by Fred Grover, they can also, I'm sure, pick it up on Amazon. And what were some of the greatest ahas and gifts that you discovered while doing this book?
I think some of the biggest ahas were, seeing the geometry of sound, semantics, as we call it, and learning how that was just another layer of sacred geometry, and then seeing the geometry of nature, the geometry of sacred temples, and then recognizing that not only is there, geometry on planet Earth, from the natural world and from these higher civilizations of the Greek, Maya, Inca, Egyptians, etc., but that there's geometry in the alignments of many of these sacred sites. For example, Angkor Wat, Graham Hancock talks about this at Paramount, is aligned with the constellation Draco. So there's all these archaeoastronomic alignments, as above, as below, that are lining up to create that higher resonant field. Mount Meru, the sacred mountain in Tibet, actually aligns with the temple of Angkor Wat in terms of the four mountains surrounding it, and the central one being Shiva, right? So the Hindus came around and built this temple to mirror the sacred mountain in Tibet. And then the temple, they then, aligned with other temples in Cambodia to align with the stars above. It's just crazy to see all these things. And it's not just happenstance. Obviously, these people were aware, spiritually very well aware, but also very scientifically capable in terms of making these extremely calculated positionings of the various temples and watts that were placed around that area and around the world. The Maya also did the same thing, and I believe they've aligned with Pleiades or some other constellation, which has been recently discovered. So that was one big revelation. And then discovering how other things such as dance, when we think about, the dervish dance, or we think about even ecstatic dance, how that can help us flow energy. And sometimes how that flow of spinning is even found in some of your forms that spin and create energy. So the physical body can spin and morph and heal by dance. How water, I studied the secret Life of Water by Emoto, and really did a deep dive beyond him, just looking at how that can be healing to us and how it's so important to maintain high quality water and to connect to water, whether it's meditating by a mountain stream or floating in an ocean in a meditative state. There's so many different things that I feel I became enlightened about just doing the deeper work. I wanted to mention the other book. I don't know. I think I've gotten a copy to you, but it's the Awakening Gaia book. And this goes on to talk, it's also on the spiritualgenomics.com site, but and both of these are on Amazon. But I've got some crazy things in here, like this is my meditation sound table that I would suspend one of your forms above me while I be meditating, receiving pulse magnetic field therapy, getting mantra-based music, and then meditatively connecting to the double star form above me with a crystal placed in it. So there's some cool little pearls in here, and then some pictures of placements of some of the forms, for example, on Easter Island, and then again on Lake Titicaca that I discuss. And this is more of a spiritual adventure book, but it's totally based on true stories. And the other one is more of a deep dive on, the scientific and spiritual levels of sacred geometry.
So Fred, I wanted to ask you this question. So when you were out at some of these sacred sites, planting some of these forms and tuning into the energy, I know you were having some pretty wild adventures. So can you share a story of something that really spoke to you in your journey of going into these sacred sites to activate?
Yeah, a real short story just on Lake Titicaca in Peru, which is also in Bolivia. I showed up there by myself to do this placement and had connected with a shaman to be there to help translate, but also to do ceremony on Blood Moon several years ago. And when I arrived in the airport, I was getting ready to decide whether or not to take kind of the chicken bus down to Bolivia or to take a cab. And a gal by the name of Shelley, who you've met, actually, Greg has met, tapped me on the shoulder and said, well, where do you happen to be going? And I said, well, I'm going to Island of the Sun to, do some ceremony. I didn't really think anything of it. I hopped in the cab with her. We decided that was, just as cost effective sharing a cab. And then it ends up talking to her. I was like, well, what brings you here? What's your deeper mission? She's like, well, I'm here to activate the divine feminine energy of the planet and the divine feminine energy in myself. I'm like, oh my God, I have a form in the back of the cab, which is a unity grid. And this whole purpose is to activate the divine feminine energy by placing it in the deepest lake, high elevation lake in the world, which is thought to be the divine feminine energy. Would you like to join me? And then it ends up she's a mesa carrier, Pachacuti Mesa, Peruvian mesa carrier, just like me. And it's just like, talk about synchronicity. And the other wild thing that happened on that trip was we went out on the day of the blood moon, hired an amazing boat captain, kind of a small Peruvian fishing vessel. And we tapped in collectively into a beautiful space north of Island of the Sun, where there's a triangulation between 3 islands. And we went to the furthest point of the top of the triangle to place it in a very deep space. And we were playing flutes and saying some, very special intentions together. We dropped that spear into the water. I don't know if I shared this with you. And immediately after we dropped it, there was this clear area of smooth water that just suddenly formed and shot all the way to Island of the Sun. And it persisted for like 2 minutes and then it just dissipated. So there was this crazy line of energy that flowed right to the point of Island of the Sun from the place of dropping that love bomb, as I call it.
Wow.
Yeah. The unity grid of love and oneness and all is super powerful. And And then we went back that night and we did ayahuasca ceremony, and that's a whole nother story. You'll just have to read the Awakening Gaia book to hear about that. It is wild. So little things, well, I shouldn't say little things, big things like that occurred, provide that level of reassurance to me that I'm not some crazy guy going out just dropping crystals and forms, that there's a higher level of energy and activation that's truly happening. Where it's going to go over the next 10, 20 years, I don't know, but I'm flowing with it.
You know, synchronicities are so wonderful. It's like that's universe saying you're doing it. You're in the right place at the right time, and just to be playing with everything that is. And I think that's one of the key things that goes on with our pendants and people working with our tools. They start talking about synchronicities increasing. And it's so important because that's the way life is to be played, is in a synchronous manner, so that all the parts fit together and you know how valuable you are, because the cogs, that come together, you're one of those that has to fit in the right place. And the universe is saying, yeah, Fred, you're in the right place. You're wonderful.
Yeah. And Fred, I've been getting this really, really deeply in meditation. I don't know whether you've been picking up on this too, but what I'm hearing is that the way that we're really going to understand what we're here to do more and more, how to proceed, is being in the moment and looking at these synchronicities, looking at the opportunities that just come our way and reading the signs. It's not going to be like somebody whispering in your ear. It's more of look at what's happening in your life now, who shows up, what books falls off the shelf, what, something that comes into your consciousness that is alerting us to recognize this is how those are the breadcrumbs, showing us
Yeah.
the path. Are you finding that's true for you too?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, 110%. And I think one of the key things is also to be in flow, as we call it, is open-mindedness. So, as we were talking about how people are closed-minded, black and white, judgmental and profiling, that's totally blocking flow. To be in flow, you have to be heart-centered. You've got to be open to all possibilities, and you have to be aware of what's happening. So yeah, if that book just shows up on the floor for you to read, or somebody shows up in an airport randomly to tap on your shoulder wanting to share a ride, or a crow lands on the tree, right out in front of my office here. I pay attention to those things, and it may not be that I'm like, oh my God, that's, I need to look up what's the spirit animal crow mean. It's just like, okay, note to self. And then particularly when I see 2 or 3 synchronicities occur in that same genre, then it's like, oh, okay, we've really got something going on here, and I need to pay attention to it a little bit more. I think a lot of folks are afraid of doing that. There should be no reason to be afraid of being aware of synchronicities. I think it's just another opportunity for people to find enlightenment, to connect with people that are going to help you do the deeper work,
Yeah. And, as we're activating the feminine, the messaging that comes from the feminine is not on the mental plane. So it's not like someone giving you directions on where to go and how to do it. It's really looking deeply, like, when you were talking about nature before, nature gives us so much information in all the patterns and the cycles and the smells and the beauty. Gosh, last night, the most amazing sunset.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Was it incredible?
Oh, it's so good. Yeah.
It was incredible. And
all the oranges and
wasn't that amazing? And it's so important to be cognizant of
Mhm,
what is being shown to us. We may not be able to understand it in the moment, but you start
mhm.
putting the pieces together and something is getting activated. That's part of, I love your title, Awakening Gaia. As we're being awakened, it's not as if, oh, I know what I'm being awakened to. Oh, yes, thank you. It's a gentle process, and it's definitely massaging that capability that we all have of our intuition, our higher knowing. And if we
Yeah,
really are moving into these higher dimensional awarenesses, then that's critical that we are really exercising that part of ourselves more and more.
absolutely. My 18-year-old son is working on his master beekeeper, um, certification, and we have a few beehives that we take care of. And one afternoon this summer, I was just sitting out there by the hives and watching the girls, as we call them, the worker bees, fly in and out of the hive, and there was this just beautiful, loving connection I was developing to this colony of bees, and the hum, and just feeling, wow, to see them working together, the queen laying eggs, the larvae developing, this whole beautiful colony, manifesting what it does was just a beautiful thing. And we've decided we're going to do this interesting thing where we're going to create a Slovenian bee hut, where we're going to put hives inside, basically kind of a shed that will point out. It's going to be up in the mountains. We're going to put um, basically a massage table with the sound healing speakers in it. And then we're going to put microphones in a couple of the hives, and then we're going to meditate to the sound of the hum of the bees within this little hut that we create. So that's going to be another little talk we'll have to do sometime in terms of connecting to the harmonic hum and the geometry of the honeycombs that are surrounding the individual in that space. So, I mean, there's so much beauty and energy we can flow with nature if we're willing to reconnect to it and nurture it, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
I was given a CD, gosh, maybe 15 years ago or more, by someone who was doing work with recording bee sounds and using it in healing modalities, and finding that it coupled with geometries really, really well. And so there's something very definitely to when you take that background sound that comes from things like bees, or when I tune in and meditate and go deep, I always hear the crickets and the
Mhm.
frogs and, all these sounds that um, I think sometimes people hear them and they go, oh my God, am I hearing something I'm not supposed to, like tinnitus or
Yeah.
but no, I think it's coming from within us. These things get evoked of the
Mhm.
sound current that rides through all things.
And yeah, exactly. And I think it's that primal sound, whether it's the sound of a stream next to us, the sound of the
Mhm.
wind blowing through the trees, the sound of a crackling fire, the sound of the humpback whale while I'm scuba diving, that just awaken us to that deeper knowing of where we came from and where we need to return. And I'm hopeful that as we do this work, reconnecting, that we again will heal ourselves.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. It's interesting, like people are very concerned about things like 5G and all of the electricity that is overwhelming,
Mhm,
everything that's happening in that whole spectrum. Um, and from what we understand from our guidance is that it's not that that particular part of the spectrum is the problem. It's that we're being inundated with the same thing over and over and over, which becomes so pervasive that it
mhm.
blocks out the ability for us to connect. So for instance, like, we have this geometry called the 5G solution. It doesn't block out 5G because it can't. And if it did, then your phones and things wouldn't work and your computers wouldn't work. But what it does is it establishes this very strong connection so that that other part of the spectrum is not dominating. Instead, you're getting what is natural. You're connecting with the whole plethora of what is there for us. And
Yeah, kind of
that's what we're
attenuates
doing.
a signal that can be harmful. I
Exactly.
think that's really important to have that tool available for people. And yeah, I think the more we can get out of the city into nature too, the better off we are. I am concerned about the 5G towers going up around me everywhere, and kind of mixed literature on how bad it is, but I can't imagine it's helpful to our DNA on any level. And what could it be doing to our auric field? And then you combine that with Wi-Fi signals and all the other electrical interference in a busy city, and it makes you ponder, okay, am I seeing a rise in violence and mental health issues and cancer related to this? We know that air pollution contributes a huge amount to lung cancer in big cities, particularly in Beijing and probably a little bit here in my town of Denver. We need to study more about electrical harmful frequencies and how they're affecting us as well. But I think obviously there's lobbyists that are going to block that kind of research, or filter it out. So how do we get good research? I mean, the same thing happened with tobacco, until the tobacco papers came out.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I came across a quotation a little while ago from Rudolf Steiner, anthroposophist. He started Waldorf schools. And in 1917, he was saying how serious the situation was in terms of human beings being blocked from their own humanity because of the electromagnetic frequencies that were buzzing through the environment. And he said that in 1917. That was only about 25 years after Nikola Tesla lit up the World's Fair for the first time with alternating current.
Right. I mean, what do they have then? Telegraph? Maybe a little bit.
But then he started doing blocks in the city of New York where they'd light up a block because they had to be close. That's what Edison was doing with DC. But bottom line, you just think he said that in 2017, and it's been over 100 years. And how many more frequencies have been added to our electromagnetic spectrum, and how many artificial elements in our technologies have been introduced in terms of toxins that the body doesn't know how to deal with, some of these heavy metals and things we're putting in. So bottom line, I mean, that's why we have developed this 5G solution, such that what it does, and that's one of the new things I wanted to share with you, Fred, is that it creates a space, a vortex, that even while the rest of this is going on, you can be in the center of the hurricane. You can be at that calm point, which is the center of your being. And it creates that field where you're able to go into that space and not be negatively affected. Because all of these things, I feel the way they negatively affect us is ultimately they disconnect us from the full flow of energy from higher self through all the different aspects of our being, the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, the physical. All of these aspects of our being need to be connected. And that's what's happening in this space when the energy flows. We're connected, and then the negative effects of what goes on with the electromagnetic spectrum doesn't have the same effect of disconnection and thus that's the precursor to all the difficulties, the disease, emotionally, mentally, everything.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got to come try that 5G form and experience it soon. It'd be great.
Well, let's make a date.
Yeah,
Well,
for sure.
Oh, Fred, this has been wonderful. It's been wonderful to connect with you here and to, just to talk and hear your wise medical doctor self and your wise spiritual self and your friend and you're just such a beautiful spirit. We love you.
Love you
And
guys too.
yeah,
So
has
good to
been great.
reconnect. And yeah, I mean, it's such a funky, weird time. I wish I could wave a wand and change it all. But, I think this is a challenge on humanity for us to wake up and for us to look for tools within ourselves and around us to, shift and heal ourselves and help heal others. And I wish everybody watching this, the best in health, the best in spiritual growth, and, deep love to everybody to, awaken their hearts, to awaken their third eyes and their crowns and their root chakra, to connect more to Gaia. By doing that, by, holding one of your forms and going deep, I think we can make it through this, but we really have to be bold and we have to be hyper connected to the spiritual world around us. Without that, it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah.
So,
and
oh,
a lot of the things you've been saying, it sounds like sometimes it's a lot of work or a lot of doing, but in essence, at the end of it, it's being and allowing. It's relaxing and allowing. That's how the synchronicities happen. When we get out of the way and we act as a little child, like Christ said in the Bible, that's how you enter heaven, by having the wonder, the joy, the play of a child. And that's when you allow life to flow through you.
absolutely. Letting things flow, but at the same time being bold and not afraid, right? And willing to share thoughts like we are with others, so that they're able to connect to these things and not just sitting in a cave. So share that love, share that knowledge, share that energy of enlightenment, and hopefully we'll make that quantum leap sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we
All
don't have to
right.
be,
Yes.
we don't have to be cavemen anymore. Huh?
Women.
Exactly. You can dance on the planet and
Yes.
share all that.
Time to
energy.
dance and play.
So
Exactly.
thank you.
Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you
Fred.
guys, and have a wonderful week. And hope to see you soon. I'll definitely stop by on the way to Rocky Mountain National Park.
We'd love that. We'd
Okay.
love that. And blessings to everyone. Blessings, love, compassion, enlightenment to all life. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for watching and being a part of the Divine Paradigm co-creation. The time has come for us to work together in co-creative ways, with the outcome being greater than any of us could have achieved alone. You make a difference in this important time, so thank you so much. We want to let you know tomorrow there will be another amazing conversation with one of the heartfelt thought leaders who've chosen to be a part of this symposium. Each program is available for 48 hours, and all of them can be replayed on Sundays. You'll be receiving an email in your inbox that will take you to the next conversation. So make sure you're getting our emails. Please stay with us and stay tuned. We're going to have a lot of fun with some powerful messages. The full program takes place 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, for 3 weeks. And the full program will also be available at the end for purchase. Keep checking back to the page to enjoy our next conversation. Blessings and love.